I'm ready to start the Board of Sign Language Interpreters meeting at 9:38 a.m. May 8th, 2025. That's the meeting in person, also on Zoom. It's being recorded, be uploaded for public view online. We will do roll call. First of all, Colleen Thayer, chairperson here. Eric Cook, vice chair, is here. Mish. Tammy Adams here. If the members would like to comment, please say your first and last name for the record. Board members, we would appreciate if you not use the chat feature on Zoom. HLO Health Licensing Office, call individuals to participate on Zoom. Please keep your phones muted and your cameras turned off during the entire meeting until it's your turn to comment during the public comment period of the meeting. Now the agenda, the public comment section, a topic of discussion on the agenda you may comment on, or any topic related to that the board has authority to discuss and regulate. Any member of the public who would like to comment, please sign your name to the list in the center of the room, or you can email Josh Page. Email is josh.page@oha.oregon.gov. And please provide your first and last name. Everyone, please continue to use appropriate language, proper etiquette, and follow our protocol. All right, I turn it over now.
The first item is approval of the agenda.
It's open. Hold on just a moment, I need to get it open. All right.
And there, we won't have a legal advice executive session on number 4.
Okay, now I have the agenda in front of me. We want to go ahead and approve the agenda in front of us.
Can I make a comment before we approve or anything? Good morning, this is Eric Crook. I was just, before we approve the agenda, I wanted to, I guess, share a little concern. I don't know where, what all we're going to talk about today. But my concern is that if we're not extending the period of non-enforcement, that we haven't yet talked about what I keep calling the ASL police. So it's whoever is
the interpreter. I'm having a difficult time.
Sounds like you're underwater, Eric.
sign. Is that fine? I'll sign my comment and then somebody just voice it for me.
Okay. My request before we approve the agenda that is up for submission, I just wanted to make sure with the time that we have non-enforcement, be sure that it actually does begin July 1st. We have not spoken about who the ASL police is basically that process. If we aren't actually going to begin to require licensure as of July 1st, and I don't see anything listed on the agenda to discuss about that process. So if that's extended, that's fine. There's no reason to discuss it at this moment. But if it is not extended, then I feel it would be worthwhile to broach the subject now. I just wanted to put that out before we approve the agenda. Thank you. Mitch? I wanted to add to that, we have also not yet decided about the student waiver. And if we do not extend the deadline, that would mean our students cannot graduate. They cannot do their internships and they would be stuck there. So then we need to add a topic to the agenda. Sammy?
You can talk about it under other board business or under licensing and fiscal statistics.
Is that satisfactory to everyone? Yes, okay. So then shall we go forward and approve the agenda? Yes, Mish says. He's giving a thumbs up. Nick says yes. Eric accepts. And Colleen says, yes, I accept it to be approved.
And interpreters are gonna switch now?
Update. Oh. 1 moment for interpreter switch.
Okay, I'll go ahead and, I'm filling in for Bob today. This is Sammy.
So we'll go ahead and start with, yes, with the director.
So just briefly, Josh sent out an email last week with some new training that the Oregon Government Ethics Commission has. So if you're interested, you can go ahead and take that. Just as an FYI, we still need 2 public members, 2 members who are deaf, blind, or hard of hearing, and who represent an association in this state that promotes and protects the rights of persons who are deaf and hard of hearing. So if you have any people that might be interested, they can call me, they can call Chrissy, they can call Josh, and we'll make sure they get them an application. But we're not getting any applicants for those 2 positions. And then we need another member who represents the professional organization in the state for sign language interpreters and who holds a license under the board. So we need 3 positions. We haven't got any applicants. So,
What's the word? Eric? I'm wondering, is it typical for boards to have vacancies like that?
this is Sammy. It can be sometimes. Yeah, we try to do as much recruitment we can. We just haven't got any response from the recruitment that we have done.
Okay, thank you.
These are really specific positions, so it isn't just like anybody can do it. I mean, they're very specific as to who fits in these categories. That's part of the problem. And I will
Looking
go,
for a unicorn.
if you have
Colleen
people,
says exactly.
have them call us and or email and we'll get them, make sure and get them the application.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm just gonna go right into licensing. So, I'm just gonna breeze right through. So we had, we have a total of
Sammy, hold on a minute. This is Colleen. I have a question. I've been thinking about the training involved with the positions. And my concern is that people haven't been applying because the responsibilities of their day jobs prohibit them. And they're not willing to sacrifice that to volunteer here. So I think financially, it's a financial burden for people for that position. So, you know, maybe if it was an evening or a weekend, it's possibly we could get more recruited, interested parties, but as it stands right now, we wouldn't be allowed to do it, or would we be allowed to do that?
It could be, the office could consider it.
Eric, go ahead. I feel like that's really important to consider because we have had lots of vacancies and very little volunteers and absences, and I think people are interested, but there is a huge conflict there, like you said. Colleen says, I really want to encourage us to consider changing those times. Eric seconds. And Mish thirds and Tammy fourths.
So,
And if we have the authority to do it, then let's do it. Let's make it happen, says Colleen. Eric says, please, please, let's do that.
I'll have to,
Sammy, I'm sorry that we interrupted that, but go ahead. You can.
no, I mean, I'll bring it up with Bob and see what he wants to do. See if we can do it. It's not something we've ever done in the past, so. Licensing.
Eric says, we are an exception. Colleen says exactly that. Eric says, okay, I'll be quiet now.
We've licensed 45 education licensees, 58 generalists, 12 legal, 120 medical, 99 supervisory licenses were issued, have been issued, and 11 provisional. You guys primarily have females who are sign language interpreters. And then, I don't have the page numbers here. The fiscal report says sign language interpreter board state fiscal year. You guys are coming out of the hole, so you're only at a negative $32,427.68. So that's great. Any questions about that?
Sammy, so is some of the revenue in there, is that where we've been reimbursed for prior interpreting services? Or is that all in licensure fees?
Licensure fees.
Eric. Hi, it's me again. You're talking about revenue and refunds. Do we have any update about that money coming back to us?
Yeah, about people who people who've already received the license, getting refunds, is that what?
I'll clarify. Because I believe the first year, we as a board, we had made payments for interpreting services, correct? And then I believe HLO said that we would be fixing that so we could get money back. So the entire responsibility wouldn't be on us. And that was about $57,000 if I remember. Oh, so, excuse me, $73,000. So I was wondering if there was an update about that.
Yeah, as far as my understanding is that's being fixed. I don't know where it will show up on the financial statement, but I'll make a note for Bob and our fiscal analyst to try to point that out. It could be under the expenditures part, like that got decreased. I don't know, I have to ask. I'm not positive, but I'll ask how it will be reflected once it gets reimbursed, or if it already has been reimbursed.
Mhm. Tammy,
This is Tammy. Forgot to introduce myself last time. I believe in the last meeting, Bob said that it would slowly come in, that it wouldn't all come in as one large reimbursement. But yes, how that will reflect on this report is a great question. And then again, on the breakdown that Bob said he would provide us. I believe we decided once a year. I can't remember the breakdown that he presented at the last meeting. Just so that it's clear on any of the reports that we are getting that money reimbursed.
I think, yeah, you guys decided on once a year. Do you want that more often?
I guess that depends on how often the reimbursements come in. I don't know on the paperwork side of it on your end or on the budgeting end, how often that money gets reallocated.
Okay, I got it all written down.
wait a minute, it feels like the board just really wants to make sure that the money is going to show up where it's supposed to be, where it needs to be. So every time we comment about this, I think we really want to just have an end to this process. Is that what we're all agreeing on here? We just want to see it.
Yes,
The completion. So whether or not it's showing up in a specific category is irrelevant. We really just want to see it ended. Is that correct?
yes, and it's being done. But I feel like I'm hearing two things. Tammy wants to see where and when it comes in, and Bob has said that it will come in over time. And Colleen wants an end, so it's being reimbursed, so it is an end. But Tammy wants to see where it comes in, so I'm hearing two things. Just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly.
This is Tammy. I can clarify. So as long as when it comes in, like if it was on this report, that it would show up, maybe if, let's say if it was under revenues, and then an amount that was for licensing and an amount that was for the reimbursement. So that we see that it's in there and it's documented that it's been in there at some point.
Okay.
I don't know if that needs to be more than once a year. I think that depends on how often those are coming in.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that help, Sammy?
Yeah. I mean, it's being done, so it's all done. This is not. It's not reflected here. So yes, we will find out and we'll report at the next meeting. And then this would be where you guys discuss the limited waiver and the students. If you want to discuss it here, or you can discuss under other board business.
This is Mish. I prefer to discuss it now. I'd rather discuss it now because I don't want time to get away from us, like has in the past. So I prefer to discuss it now. Of course, it's up to the chair. Colleen says, are there any other important matters that we need to discuss, or can we just jump straight to the other business now? Can we jump ahead to the other business? Eric says, we're not jumping to other business, but we're just going to discuss that issue now in the reports. Colleen says, okay, are we sticking it in here now? Eric says, well, there's two things we could do, and we're not moving the bottom one up to the top. We're just discussing this topic here now. Colleen says, okay, let's go ahead. That's what we're talking about. Colleen says, yep, okay, let's go ahead. Mish, do you want to go ahead and take over?
Eric's topic can go first.
Hi, it's Eric here again. Okay, so I feel a little out of sorts here, out of order. So the next slide talks about complaints. So I'm just a little curious, how is that information reported and to whom is it reported? Who reviews it? Who approves it? Who accepts it? Is that part of our responsibility as the board?
Do you want to move into the regulatory report?
Well, no.
Because we can do that.
So I think my point is to hold, let's go with Mish now, but I do want to discuss the complaints, reporting of that, and to clarify what our responsibilities in that process is. I think that's very important. But if right now, as far as the reports go, if, Mish wants to discuss that topic, that's fine. I do feel like it's important to discuss. If not now, then we can discuss it in this meeting, but just a little later.
Yeah, it's on the
complaints.
agenda.
We can have a moment for the interpreters to switch, please. Thank you. This is Eric. For now, we can hold on my topic, deference to Mish. Thank you. Mish? Yes, my request is simple. My request is that the student waivers that I request an extension of the student waivers for students that are parts of interpreter training programs to be able to participate in internships and graduate. And Colleen says, and we're referring to students currently in those interpreter training programs that don't hold licensure, correct? How long of a window are we thinking here for a waiver? Are we thinking 6 months? What's the time frame? Ms. Mish, we would establish a waiver for all students as long as they are within internships. Calling for an indefinite period of time? Mish, yes, because some internships run year-round, some internships don't. And some students, obviously, there are some students graduating, some students that are just enrolling. So they're all in a different part of the training process. And so I feel we're going to need that waiver indefinitely for the process to work. Colleen, Sammy, is that possible? Can we do that?
I just want to get some clarification. We currently have the limited waiver on enforcement, where HLO is not going after people who don't hold licenses if they're practicing. But what I think I'm hearing is that you want all students to be exempt from licensure forever. Is that accurate?
Yes, for it not to be mandatory, so that they are exempt from that requirement. I think exempt would be a better word. Perhaps a waiver. You're correct. A waiver wouldn't be the right term. So we're not asking for a waiver. We're rather asking for an exemption from the requirement of licensure. Thank you for clarifying.
Yes. So definitely something that we can look into. There are a list of exemptions already in the law, and there's some additional ones in 950. Students are not included in that. There's actually the in-training license that's added. So I don't know how that will all play, but we can definitely look at what we currently have and to see if an exemption for students is possible. Absolutely.
Eric? This is Eric Crook. So that phrase, look into it. Our next session is July 23rd. And the licensure requirement goes into effect as of July 1st. So we will not, I don't know that we have time for looking into it and acting on our next meeting.
So
Mitch,
are we going back to the limited waiver?
this is Mish. Regarding the looking into it, I've made this request already a minimum of 3 times, and every time I've made the request, the response has been, we'll look into it. And regardless of the waiver I think is a separate issue, that limited waiver, whether whether we extend the limited waiver or not, we still do need something to ensure that our students are able to make progress in the field separate from the waiver. And like I said, we've heard that looking into it response for quite a while now. And I think a decision needs to be made. We are fortunate that we don't have internships happening this summer, even though typically we do have internships running year round. So again, regardless of whether we extend limited waiver, we do need to establish an exemption for students. This is Eric, I second that. Pauline, Eric, you second that? Okay. Eric, yes, I think it's necessary.
Well, it has to be lawful. So, I mean, we can only do what the legislature gives us authority to do. I think at the July meeting, we can definitely have an answer on how we can move forward with that. I do believe that the limited waiver will be extended at least 6 months, if not longer. Just because if there's changes with Senate Bill 950 and then got to get things up and running again. So I can't imagine it won't be extended at least 6 more months. So till January 1st, 27, right? 26. Oh, there's Heather.
Okay, and Heather, would we like to hear from Heather now? Your comment?
Good morning. Thanks, Colleen. Sammy, is it correct that if we have additional information for the board to consider and if the timing did not align with the July meeting or if there is an extension to the waiver, that there could be another board meeting before that time, and that way we would be able to address the board's concern in this area, and that information can be compiled and then determined a little bit closer to the July timeframe?
Yes, absolutely.
Tammy?
This might be a good time for me to put out there that I am not available for either the July or the August meeting. I will be working out of town.
This is Eric. I'm not available for those meetings either.
So this is Sammy. So in the law, it says you have to meet 4 times, once each quarter, and you're right at quorum. So do you guys could pick new dates today that can work for everybody? Because you have to meet. That's the thing.
My main concern is that we have brought up this issue. It's not the first time. It was over a year ago we first brought it up. Mish is agreeing. And we have not received a response to that inquiry. And now we're being forced to try to cram in another session so that we can discuss an answer now before more effects go into place. So you will understand it's a bit frustrating for us as a board. Eric? This is Eric Crook. When we had, in addition, when we had signed up to be on the board, we had very much more than a quorum. We had in excess of quorum. And since then, the board has been reduced in size. And I have my regular life that I have to put on hold to attend these sessions. And I still have a life to live outside of this role. So we're also discussing how we're not getting community individuals that are standing up and wanting to be part of the board as part. I think that ties to this issue. It's a lot of responsibility for the four of us on this board to carry. And I think it's reasonable to have summer plans, normal summer plans. If I need to request time off, sometimes we need time off. And so it feels like when we ask for time off or not being able to attend, we are punished for that. I feel this board is important, but it's important that we have our normal lives, and I understand accommodating the board's schedule, but there's a limit to that. And now it's to the point where the board needs to accommodate my schedule. I'm sorry. This is true for any board, but the state that we're in right now, we're at the point where the board schedule really needs to accommodate.
You guys want to change dates? Absolutely, we'll do that today.
This is Tammy. So the difficulty with my summer job is I've signed a contract with my summer employer, and that encompasses, it's not interpreting. Oh, sorry. With my summer employer, and I leave on June 19th and I'm gone until August 18th. So in various spots around the country where I may or may not even have connection. So I agree with Eric. I'm also in the same spot that when I joined this board, there was plenty more than quorum, and now there is not, but I have already signed a contract with my other employer. So I'm not available for summer dates.
Do you guys have any suggestions on where we could reach out to people to maybe want to serve on the board? You have some suggestions on who we could contact? We've contacted the OAD and
Eric?
Bridges so far.
Yes, the OAD would be the first suggestion. Bridges would be another great
Yeah,
suggestion.
we've
So
done that.
good there. ORID, Oregon Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf. Another. Facebook. There's Instagram. Yeah, this is Colleen. Yeah, I think it's time that we need to make a change. We need to make sure we have more people available to be serving on the board. Eric? I was considering what Sammy had mentioned about how we need to meet quarterly during the year. Tammy, if your schedule is limited from, you said from June to August, I believe we might be able to meet maybe earlier in June or maybe in September, later in September, to satisfy that quarterly requirement. This is Colleen, yes, and we could have a 5-minute session just to satisfy the requirement, and then we can meet again in September. The fact that we just need to show that we have shown the effort to meet. We can't be forced to change our personal schedules based on that. So perhaps just having a 5-minute meeting to have the meeting.
So
Heather, did you have a comment?
Thanks, oh, sorry, video's not on. Button didn't go. Thank you, Colleen. So the statutory requirement is quarterly, as Sammy said. I believe, Sammy, correct me if I'm wrong, that today's meeting meets the second quarter requirement. And so the next quarter, if Tammy is available and others are available after her August return date, then there could be a meeting set up towards the later part of August or in September, which would then meet that third quarter requirement. And then the fourth quarter would be thereafter, so after September, so October, November, December. So perhaps there's a time frame in that late August or sometime in September that would work for everyone. Is that right, Sammy, in terms of quarters?
Yes, correct.
Great.
Can I add one thing? So at the end of every year, usually at the last quarter, we'll bring a list of dates to the board to vote on for the next year. Is there a different mechanism that you would want us to do so that we're accommodating your dates and your vacations? So I think in your October meeting, we brought a list of dates for 2025 and you guys adopted them. And so I want to know if there's another vehicle that you would want us to use so that we're not, stepping on your personal plans and your personal time.
Eric? Eric and then Tammy, please. Yes, it's Eric again. Yes, I think last October, when we approved that schedule, we had more serving on the board. We had more members. And at that time, we weren't concerned about necessarily the four of us having to be at every session during the 2025 year. As board positions get filled or become vacant, situations change, and I think that the topic of the schedule should be brought up again when changes like that happen to the board. Tammy?
Yes, this is Tammy, and yes, Eric, that's exactly what I was gonna say. So, and just to be clear that for me, this is not about vacation. This is about another contract obligation that I have signed with my employer.
Ms. Eric, and yes, I have a commitment to my children, so there you go.
Can we pause briefly for interpreter switch? 1 moment. Colleen says, there are many things that happen during the course of a year, and we know to expect the unexpected. But what I am suggesting is that we can propose many ideas, but one of which is to shift the time. We can recruit more people. We can advertise very clearly the positions with the time expectations, and maybe we could get more applicants. Because right now, they're all thinking of the daytime hours. So that's one idea, just to make it clear in the advertisement to recruit more people to those open positions. I just thought of another thing we could put out. Maybe Eric, you mentioned, I know you have young children at home, and some of us don't necessarily, but do you prefer weeknights, weekends? Is that less disruptive to your board duties? Eric again here. Thank you, that's a good question. It's tough because I also work at a college, and every term the evening needs change. So if I agreed to nights, well then, 4 months from now, who knows what could happen? Or I could say weekends, but I also have scout commitments.
Would it
I honestly, if others' schedules, if we could compare, if we could get together and try to align them, then I can set up my schedule with other activities. Colleen says, Tammy?
Could we, would you want to schedule your next meeting at this meeting and at every meeting you schedule the next meeting? And not do an annual list? That be more helpful? Because I'm just trying to make it work for everybody, HLO included. But we have to be able to give notice to the public and, all those things that are required to do. So would it be easier for you to decide on meetings at the current meeting every time? Or do you want to stick with the annually, and then if there's a shift in board membership, then we revisit it again?
Yes, Mish? Mish says, my preference would be that we decide each meeting the following. Because it seems that sometimes dates change regardless, and HLO sometimes has to cancel, or we do not have a quorum. So, maybe, obviously, deciding the schedule a full year in advance is not working out. So perhaps we could try doing it each meeting.
Absolutely.
I'm in support of that. Colleen's calling on Tammy.
This is Tammy. Sammy, thank you for that suggestion and for trying to work with us. I agree with Mish that deciding for the year is not working. If we decide at the current meeting when the next meeting would be, that would give us enough time to give proper warning
Yes.
to, okay. And then also I like the idea of exploring changing to evening times or other times, maybe even later in the afternoon, something. Because then also I think we would get more attendance from the community because many interpreters are working during the day. And there's many interpreters that have told me, I'd love to come and watch the meetings and be a part of all of this, but I can't because I'm working. So I think maybe even if we look at one meeting is during the day, the next meeting is in the evening, and just kind of adjusting those, if we have that flexibility, I think we'd get more involvement from the community. As hopefully board members and also just as participants.
I'm fairly confident that Bob would be willing to adjust and do evening. I don't know that he would be willing to do weekend, just because that gets into, union and all that kind of stuff, but I think he would definitely be on board with doing some evening meetings. We can just shift our schedules.
Colleen says, let's put that on the agenda for the next meeting that we have in August in the evening time. We do that?
I'm gonna say that I'm 99% sure he'll do it, so we could plan for the August meeting to be at night or later in the afternoon. Like 4, 5.
How do we feel about that? Colleen's asking. Okay, so then can we recommend dates via email or do we do it now? Honestly, I don't want to eat up too much time here.
We can decide the meeting date now, or you can decide the meeting date at the end of the meeting.
Trying to get a feel for how we're responding. And Eric says, yeah, I sort of know my schedule somewhat. After August 19th, right? So it's got to be that. Works for me. Good.
We're open every evening, so. But better not do. And I've got an August stuff, so whatever they decide.
We're free every evening.
I am available any day except the 27th. Wednesday, the 27th is out, but anything else, August anytime.
I'm sorry, Sammy, did you say something?
No Tuesdays. But we can do Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, any evening. Probably not Friday, but we would do it for you guys.
Oh, that's understandable. No. I completely understand that. I can't do Mondays, Colleen says, or Fridays.
Okay.
Tuesdays, well, that leaves Wednesday and Thursday available. So now, with consideration, I'm looking at Labor Day weekend, just trying to think about if Tammy, do you feel comfortable meeting on that 21st Thursday? So close, after you come back, we be exhausted.
Of August?
The 21st?
August? Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Mhm. I prefer Thursdays because Wednesdays are union meeting nights. So
Okay, Thursday then? Are we all good with Thursday? 28th, though, I'm afraid that that's so close to Labor Day, so
Yeah.
the 21st might be better. Heather?
Well, there's Heather.
Just checking with HLO, is there already a board meeting scheduled for the 21st? I had the DEM board meeting.
I don't have the calendar, but Josh has assured me that all the evenings are available.
I mean, we
Yeah,
have,
you don't
we do
want
have
a
a
board
Zoom
meeting
meeting,
and
but we
just
can
like
just
run
do
like
two
You're
board
gonna need
meetings.
to tell them what's in and what's out.
Yeah, so the 21st, we have a meeting.
So then that's an out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, then
21st is no, we already have another board meeting.
In the evening, Colleen is asking?
We don't know.
It's 8 AM.
Mish can't do 27th. Eric says the 28th. That's so close to Labor Day, but really it's up to you. I'm just concerned, so many people leave town over the long weekend. 28th, what do you think? Yes, Tammy?
This is Tammy. I could do for this one, Wednesday, the 20th would work because I don't have a union meeting that night.
You're free.
But typically on Wednesdays, no. The 20th? Josh, how does that look?
Yeah,
Works for us.
works for us.
20th, Mish, yeah? Eric, yeah? Okay. Get it down. Put it in.
They have to either be here or.
All right, what time now? 4 p.m.? You recommending 4?
4.
Everyone's nodding. Yes, Tammy is giving thumbs up. All right, put it in the books.
Okay. And then just one more question. Do you want to schedule something between now and then to discuss the exemption for students? Or is the waiver enough and we'll discuss it here in the August meeting?
About the waiver, Mish says, the waiver is not sufficient. We need to establish an exemption.
Right. Yes.
We need something permanent, Colleen says. Yes, Mish
Right.
agrees, permanent. The waiver extension is fine, that's temporary, but it's not a permanent solution.
Right.
And we don't meet again until August 20th to make it permanent.
So my question,
So I wanted to
do you want
ask,
to do a meeting in between now and August?
firstly, do you mind if I ask my question? Mish is saying, Colleen says, yes, Mish, your question? To Heather, she had commented that we need to be sure that we're following the law, and I assume every specialty license has students. Or I'm sorry, every field has students, architecture students, cosmetology, legal students, for example. So how do they have practicum or internship without licensure? Our conflict must not be new. So I'm just a little bit confused at that. We don't know how to solve this issue when there are so many other professions that seemingly have already solved it. So why can't we just follow the precedents? What's the problem? Why do we have to keep kicking the can down the road? Heather, do you want to respond?
Thank
Or I
you,
can
Colleen.
respond.
Can I take a stab at it, Sammy, and then you jump in as well?
Please, please.
All right, well, we'll tag team. Thank you for your good question, Mish. So each board profession program has its own set of statutes, just like this board does. And in many board statutes, there is a specific statement in the statute that pertains to students and how students are handled. And in your statutes, there isn't anything specifically stated about students. So that's why Sammy was mentioning we would need to look into that and get some legal advice. And I think too, and Sammy, correct me if I'm wrong, part of the maybe timing here is that so much has been going through the RAC and so much work has been putting into the RAC while recognizing that this is a concern of the board and it's on the I would say the agenda for consideration and looking into that. There's been a lot going on with the RAC, and that's taken a lot of priority. Not that it isn't an important issue, but given the limited waiver of enforcement, there were other issues that were being worked on. So it's not that board issues are not being worked on for sign language interpreters. It's just that there's a lot of issues that have been being worked on and trying to fit in which are the ones that are needing to go forward first. That I think is a little bit of context that Sammy can expand on too. And again, recognizing the interest and concern on this issue, and that we have to look specifically at your statutes to address what can happen for your licensees and for the students in your schools and programs.
We're going to pause a minute for the interpreters to switch.
Thank you, Heather. Beautifully said.
Thank you, Heather. So first of all, I helped write that law, and the original one did say there was a waiver for students, and HLO told us, oh, you don't need that in there. And the board will have the authority to set that up, the exemption. And so that was actually removed because HLO advised us to do so. And so now here we are struggling to set that up because why? And that's the frustration. Secondly, I understood that RAC and the board, we all have a lot to do, but also it often feels like we also never really finish anything. And it feels like every time we propose an issue, it just comes back to RAC, or they say, oh, HLO needs to write that, and it's very frustrating. So honestly, what I'm hearing is people don't really have an interest in joining the board because what's the point? You know, we meet and we meet and we meet and we meet, but if you look back, if I look back at my notes and I look at decisions, they're not happening. We're not making any progress here, and that's really frustrating. So now here we are again, and I'm asking to discuss the student exemptions. And again, what I'm hearing is, oh, well, we need to research. Even though I've asked it already several times without any results. And that's not a RAC issue, and that's not a board issue. That's the postponement that's been going on here. So how do we definitively make sure that at the next meeting, a decision will be made? How do we end this and have a result?
So if I may, Colleen, just remind the board that there is a rulemaking process that needs to be followed. And so when the board, if it wanted to address having an exemption in rule for students after it received information that it could do so, then it would need to go through the rulemaking process, which is what the RAC is part of, is that RAC is part of the rulemaking process. And so I don't know if that helps tie in why things have been going through the RAC and the rules have been going through the RAC, but that's part of the process. And under the health authorities policies, they use the RAC in most situations. And the RAC has been formed to address the sign language interpreter rules, all of them, which are a lot of different rules, a lot of different issues that have been coming up for them. And again, I think I'm not misstating that HLO is aware of the interest in this particular issue as well.
Yes, we are aware, and to Heather's point, I think because of the waiver, I guess we didn't prioritize it accurately. Maybe we should have prioritized it differently. We were prioritizing what the RAC was doing and not this because of the waiver. So we can scale that back and make it a priority.
Mitch, go ahead. Yes, please do make that a priority. Because that will help a lot. And just to clarify, because of all this postponement, we have been working on the school system, which means right now we're working on 2026 for the year to set up class schedules, internships, and plan for the 2026 school year. So I don't know if we can actually provide internship courses. And I need to make that decision right now. But as I wait for HLO and RAC, you know, we do need to be planning within our school system early. So yes, please do prioritize this. Eric says, I agree. Colleen's saying, okay, it seems like Sammy has recognized our concerns and will bring it up with the RAC.
Once we get an answer and get a big plan, we will reach out to you guys to schedule an additional meeting for this topic specifically.
Eric. This is Eric. I'm sorry, I just want to put that out, move this out here. I feel a little sad. I feel like Senate Bill 950 was created with the idea of needing to prevent us from having this avenue
For students.
And the people in rural communities need to be able to have the ability to enter the field. And so it's saying that this hasn't been a priority is really sad.
Yep.
And it feels like maybe our concerns are not truly being heard. Just putting that out there, I'm sorry. Finish seconds. It says, okay, what's next? Colleen says, are we finished discussing this issue? So now it says it's gonna be in Sammy's power now to move this forward to further this concern.
Yes, we will put everything else aside to make this a priority, absolutely.
Great. Thank you. Okay, looks like Eric again. He says, I'm sorry, I just want to add real quick. The last part that Sammy had just commented, you said we're gonna make it put everything else aside and make this our top priority. I don't know
What
what RAC's priorities are. I don't want to throw everything they're doing out the window. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying to please prioritize our concern. Of course, keep their priorities how they are as well. So please don't throw everything out and just do this one little thing, please.
We'll do our best.
Thank you. The interpreter wants to make a correction. Eric did not say little. Colleen says, okay, we're going to go on to the regulatory report. Eric, thumbs up.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Trampus Chuck. I'm the regulatory manager. I have not been around at many of these meetings, so this is the first time you may be seeing me. And the reason that this is the first time you're seeing me is we actually did have somebody file a formal complaint this time around. We had a complaint filed about an unlicensed sign language interpreter. But I figured that this was a good opportunity to also just talk about the expectation of the regulatory process, how the regulatory report is presented, and just kind of give you an overview of that, as well as talk a little bit about this complaint. It's a pretty straightforward issue, but I figured, like I said, this is a good time to talk about all of that. So the first thing I want to say is that this is kind of the standard format for regulatory reports across all of our boards and councils. And what it basically is going to show you is that the box on the left that says cases open, closed status, that little box right there, you only have one case in there. The year that says 2025, that is the biennium. Sure, go ahead.
I'm just looking at this.
Mish?
Do we have a PowerPoint or something to see here? I'm not sure what you're talking about.
In the materials.
Yeah, this is the regulatory report in
Which
the
page
board
are we
material.
on?
Eric says on the agenda, it's page 24.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Sorry about that. So I'll give you a second to get to that. But so like I said, this is the regulatory report, and the first box, there's not a whole lot to see on it right now. Like I said, it's got one biennium, that 2025 biennium. What that date represents is maybe not as straightforward as it might appear. The 2025 biennium ends this year. It ends on June 30th, 2025. So that when you see that 2025 biennium specifically on this report, what it's telling you is these are all the cases that pertain to that date and the previous 2 years. So in after June 31st, if a case came in on July 1st, 2025, that would show up on this report as the 2027 biennium. So it is a little bit something to get used to how this report is presented. It's pretty simple once you see it going through. It's a little strange to try to explain it, just kind of abstractly. So what you see here, like I said, is the top section, it says closed. And it says unlicensed 1, total 1, grand total 1. Because we've actually only had one formal complaint come in. We've had a few people kind of inquire about complaints over the last year or so, but nobody has actually, how do I file a complaint if I wanted to? But nobody has actually gone ahead and just filed a complaint. And this time somebody did file a complaint. Now, this complaint happened to be on the sole issue of that this interpreter was not licensed. And because we have that limited waiver out there, this falls under that. This was not, there was no services provided. There was no unprofessional conduct being alleged. It was simply that the person wasn't licensed. Because that falls under the limited waiver that we're currently operating under, it was closed because there's no enforcement on that particular issue. So that's why you see it was open, it was closed, it was because of that waiver. The next little box that you see is complaints by type. That's the one in the middle. You can see that there's only one type of complaint because there was only one complaint, and it was a licensing concern. It was somebody's working unlicensed. If there was more complaints that had come in, you would see potentially more categories in that group. You might see services provided, and that would be something like, hey, I had this interpreter come in and work for me. They were licensed, but they did something that was outside of your ethical standards or something like that. Then you would see that type of complaint show up. And that would be, you'd see something like services, or you'd see other types of things like that. Right now, you only have one on your report, and it's just the licensing concern. The third little box that you're seeing on this report is complaints by type. And as you can see, these are different various places that they could come in. They could come in from an anonymous source. This particular complaint came in anonymously. They didn't attach their name. They didn't say who they were. They just said, hey, here's this person. They're doing this. And that's all we get. And that's an anonymous. It was an anonymous complaint in this particular case. Other types of people that could complain would be a client. So a client could complain. We haven't had any client complaints, but which is good. But if some of them were that, you'd see those marked over there. And then other would be of any other source. That could be another interpreter. Maybe another interpreter heard of something or saw something that they thought, and they were reporting some other professional conduct about another interpreter. Or maybe a healthcare provider that an interpreter came in and they didn't feel they were getting their message across, or they weren't qualified, something like that. So that's that other category. So that's basically this regulatory report. As we get more complaints coming in, we will see more boxes and a more complicated report.
This is the interpreter speaking. If you wouldn't mind pausing for just one moment. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so you would see this report become more fleshed out and have more details and more complexity. I can talk. I think there was some question. I think maybe Eric had a few questions about just the regulatory process. Who vets these complaints? How are they handled? How would they be investigated? So we have not had any other complaints come in that were filed against any licensed sign language interpreters. But I can tell you how the general process will work and how it works with other boards. So, a complaint will come in, and we will have to vet that report in, on some level. We'll have to look at it and say, okay, is this against somebody who we have jurisdiction over? We have to kind of establish jurisdiction, which means, are they a sign language interpreter licensed? Are they somebody who should be licensed and aren't licensed? Someday that waiver is going to go away, and we're going to be dealing with unlicensed individuals who are practicing without a license. And we'll have to look at that complaint and try to kind of at baseline see, do we have enough information to open this complaint? Is there an allegation that a law or rule has been violated? So when a complaint comes in, if somebody makes a complaint that isn't a law, my interpreter came to help me out, to interpret for me, and they were wearing a green hat you know, we don't have any, you know, law or rule or ethical standard whether or not they were wearing a green hat. But if they said they disclosed some private information, that's something that we would have jurisdiction over. So, you know, we have to kind of look at that, and we have a very low standard for moving forward with a complaint. I don't want to say low. That's probably a mischaracterization. I should say we err on the side of opening it and looking into it. If the allegations in the complaint were true, and if they were, so we're going to assume they are true at first, just for the purpose of this process. If those allegations would constitute a violation of the law or rules, then we're going to move forward. We don't try to ascertain whether or not those things are true or not right at the get-go. We're just going to take it on face value. If this happened, would it be a violation? If that answer is yes, if a reasonable person could make that determination, we're going to move forward. So if they weren't, and it's very, very, very clear, we're gonna have to close it for lack of jurisdiction. If it's somewhere that's in the middle, that's gray, we're still probably going to open it and move it forward, and either try to get some help by bringing it to the board in an enforcement in an executive session, or we're going to move forward if we end up having a subject matter expert. Other boards, we actually bring on contract subject matter experts. We don't have that for this board because we haven't had a need for it yet. But potentially we could get on contract somebody who's a subject matter expert in the field about licensed sign language interpreters. Now, there's not a lot of those because, you know, everybody's kind of new, but we would have to figure that out, and we could do that, or we could use the board. Different boards have different strategies for dealing with that. So we would have to if the case gets open and we feel that there's any chance there's a violation, we're going to investigate it. We'll assign it to an investigator, and we'll work through that process. That could be records, that could be interviews, that could be legal review, that could be a lot of different things, or all of those things, most likely all of those things. So once we kind of feel that we're confident we've done the investigation to the best of our ability, we've done all of our due diligence, we've followed through with any all the allegations or any new ones that came up, then that investigator would write a report, and again, probably erring on the side of caution. Even if we're like, I don't know that there's anything here, we're still probably going to bring those to the board for a period of time, or as long as we need to make sure that we're vetting those properly. If there is a violation, if we say, yeah, we think there really was a violation, we're definitely bringing those to the board, and the board will then look at those. They'll have an opportunity to read over the report, read over any relevant material that goes along with it, sometimes even have interviews transcribed or things like that. And the board will decide, was there a violation? If there was a violation, what type of disciplinary action, if any, should we move forward with? So you get very involved in that process once we start clicking over and start getting those kind of complaints. We just haven't had any yet, but I figured I would go over the process for you so you understand it, and can ask any questions that you might have about the whole regulatory process or this report. So I'll turn it over now and say, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask them.
This is Colleen. So basically, we won't be looking at complaints until the waivers are done, correct? Basically, all of the complaints are going to automatically be closed out from now until waivers end. Am I correct in my understanding?
Well, so if it were to be a complaint about an unlicensed individual practicing, that very limited issue, then we're not enforcing that issue right now. That's what the waiver says. So we're not going to open that complaint and investigate it if there's no enforcement action at the end. That's what the waiver is for. Now, if we get a complaint about a licensed interpreter, who has done something to violate their practice standards, in that situation, we definitely would open up that complaint and start the process of the investigation. And those complaints would eventually come to the board so they could see those. And we would probably be, like I said, because this is a brand new board and all of this is new, investigations are not new to us or our investigators, but investigations on sign language interpreters is a new issue for us. So we would probably be, we would definitely be, I should say, consulting with the board in executive sessions at meetings regarding those investigations, because it's new, because we, and then we would have to kind of, I don't want to say negotiate, that's not, again, not the right word, more collaborate with the board to determine how much and at what points the board feels they need to be involved versus letting the process follow, letting the investigation process go through it and bring it at the end, whether you want to be involved a little bit more in the middle. But in the beginning, I definitely see a lot of collaboration coming in and saying, hey, this is what the complaint looks like. What do you think about this? What do you think about this issue? Those kind of things. We'll probably need to consult with the board to get your input throughout the process, especially as we move through the first cases. But no, we would definitely be investigating any complaint that was against a licensed interpreter that was alleging any kind of unprofessional conduct, ethical deviation from practice standards, those types of things we would investigate. This one singular issue that falls under the waiver, until that waiver is lifted and we start enforcing those, then there's not much we can do with those complaints. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, just the waiver causing harm, I see.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Eric, Tammy, Mish, any questions for Travis? I do feel like the board should be involved in the first few complaints, just to make sure that we are educated as to the process, to make sure everything is appropriate, and then after a standard has been set, routine's been set, we can make an adjustment at that point. Eric? Thank you, first of all, Trampus, for going through that explanation of the report. It's much appreciated. In the beginning, my first thought is that the board would have the responsibility to come up with the rules and policies for enforcement or for any consequences that come from that enforcement. So I'm glad to know that the HLO is the one taking that responsibility. You had mentioned, you'd use the phrase practice standards. Practice standards. Well, let me give a little context. I'm sorry. House Bill 696. I'm sorry, 969. 2696. Thank you, Eric. House Bill 2696. They're establishing rules for licensure. Okay, I'm trying to find my train of thought here. A moment. Okay, so HB 2696 establishes 6 different licensures, specialties, or fields, for work, for practice. So, which standard is used when dealing with a complaint? Because we have a CPC, Code of Professional Conduct, for our interpreters nationally, but not all licensed interpreters are nationally certified and fall under that CPC. So are we going to be using that national certification CPC and applying it to each of those specialty licensures? For example, we have an education specialist, K through 12. There is the NAIE, which is National Interpreter Interpreter Association in Education. And their CPC includes a lot of the national RID CPC, but there are some differences, some adjustments made for those working in the K-12 setting. In the medical field, in the legal field of interpreting, in those specialties, there are, like I said, there are specific codes of conduct for specific fields. So my question is there going to be one standard established for all of those specialties, or will each specialty license have their own standard? What are you referring to when you say practice standards?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And the answer is that
it depends.
Yeah, it depends. That definitely is the answer. It does depend on who. It depends on what type of sign language interpretation the person is practicing at the time of the violation. So, you know, you may have, you know, a medical interpretation practice standards that are a little bit different than the general interpretation standards. Now, the general interpretation standards probably always have to be met. So they're the larger umbrella. And then you've got the medical that maybe is more specific about when they're in that setting. And if somebody is in a general setting, but they also have a medical license, but the complaint is about their general setting, then we're going to be using the standards and ethical boundaries and things like that regarding general. If we're talking about somebody who's working in the medical under their medical license at that time, then we have to deal with the general, as well as laid on top of that, we also have to look at the, you know, whatever standards we're going to be using for the medical process. Now, oftentimes, I don't know, I mean, this board, we haven't gotten to a lot of that type of rules in the process. We've been more, this board is a very, very fresh board. It's new. It's in the very early stages of organizing that type of stuff. So when we're talking, you have all been dealing a lot with licensing and how are we going to get people licensed and bring people into the field, but also be under the statutes that we have to live with and all of that stuff. We are all dealing, you know, we've been dealing a lot with that. I don't know that the board, you know, other boards, and as this board matures, you will probably, I'm guessing, because other boards do, adopt standards. So you'll say, this is the standard that the board is adopting. You know, we're going to adopt this organization's standards, regardless if an individual is a part of that organization. You may adopt a standard from an organization that you feel is most appropriate, but that's something the board will have to do. Until we have those types of things in place, HLO does have some standard stuff regarding, you know, the kind of stuff that covers everybody, you know, criminal stuff, sexual misconduct, working outside your scope, you know, all these kinds of general things. Just ethical standards. There are some universal ethical standards. There are some things that are also in the rules about confidentiality or in the statutes and things like that. So those are the types of things I think would be easier decisions to make. When we start talking about really detailed practice standards, then we're going to have to go off community standards. We're going to have to go off maybe what that person's organization is telling them to do. So it is going to be something that we're going to have to navigate on an individual basis as per the facts of the case. And I'll tell you, even with standards that are in place, that are adopted, that seem like they're solid, every case is going to be different. Every case is going to have a different set of facts around it. And that is where the complexity comes in. And that is why, again, we're investigators. We're professional investigators. We're professional. We've done this a lot of these folks have a lot of years of investigating under their belt. We've spent a lot of time regulating licensing boards and things like that. However, none of us are sign language interpreters. And that's where we need you to collaborate with us to set these standards. So yeah, for sure. And that's how we have to operate. So yeah, and again, we can sometimes hire somebody to help us out with that. But in the end, the decisions, we want to bring that decision to the board so the board can weigh in and really start putting some finer points on what you expect your licensees, the standards you expect your licensees to uphold out there. So we're going to be going through this process, and there's going to be a lot of times where we might end up frustrated that we may or may not be able to do something about something we feel we should be able to do something about. But that's just part of the growing process of a board, and we'll have to just refine it as we go. There'll be a lot of things we can deal with, and then there'll be lots of things we find we have to write rules around or adopt standards for. So.
Thank you.
Just a moment, please, for the interpreters.
We need to actually take a longer break for the interpreters after regulatory. 10-minute.
They need it after me.
Yeah. Not as true.
All right, are we still here?
Are we good to break here, Colleen?
Yes, 10 minutes. So back at 11:14. Thumbs up from Eric.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
There we go. There's the camera angle on the room. The recording has started again. So the regulatory report is completed. Now moving on to policy report.
Yes, this is Sammy. So just quickly, you guys know about most of the stuff. Senate Bill 950 had a public hearing on the 6th, and then they are scheduled for a work session on May 13th. And then there's one other bill that appears it's going to go through adding another program to the health licensing office for dental labs. Any questions about Senate Bill 950? And then the administrative rule update is
One minute, Colleen says. Tammy, did you need time to read something? No, Tammy says, okay, let's move forward. I just thought I caught a little something on your facial expression there. Go ahead.
Yes, so the Rules Advisory Committee met on April 10th, and they will meet again on May 28th. At the April 10th meeting, we brought on 2 new members, Maya Kowalski from Grand Ron Hospital and Aaron Neff Minyard from Legacy Hospital.
I'm sorry, can you spell the names, please?
MAJAAOWALSKI, Grand Ron Hospital. Aaron, ERIN, Neff, NEFF, hyphen, MINWARD.
Thank you.
From Legacy Health, and they worked on basically some exceptions to providing services in the medical setting. So it went well. So we'll be re-looking at that again on May 28th, and then going back over supervisory, and then hopefully starting on the general license. Any questions about that?
This is Tammy. I do have one question. So with Senate Bill 950, I'll say if it passes, it's looking like it will, but if it passes, then the work that the RAC has done, do they have to go back and start all over? Do we have to start all over? What does that look like? How does that affect the work that we've done since the inception of the board?
This is Sammy. So it would depend if, so like the provisional license that they've already done, that one would stay intact. The supervisory stuff that they've done, that would stay intact. They haven't worked on the generalist yet, but I think it's gonna be similar to the supervisory, but I don't know that for sure. So all of that would stay intact. They haven't actually done anything with the education and the medical and the legal, so that won't be affected. They will have to, or will have to determine some settings around those specialty licenses that are gonna go away in 2030, I think that is. So that, there'll be some work that has to be done, but we won't be able to start that work until end of September. And then we'll have to have it done by January 1st.
Eric? Okay, Eric here. Mind repeating, Sammy, what you just said about the specialty licenses ending by 2030? What was that you just mentioned?
Yeah, so. So in section 11 of the bill, it says that well, I'm just ad-libbing, the education, medical, and legal license issued under the medical, legal, and education's before operative dates specified in 12 are valid until January 1, 2029, not 2030.
No, 2020.
2029.
So you say January first?
2029. And then it says, provide sign language interpreting services and settings determined by the State Board of Sign Language Interpreters. So the board will have to determine settings for those 3 license types that are going to go away after January 1st, 2029. It's on page 5 of the bill, section 11. Any other questions?
Yes, Eric? This is Eric again. So if SB 950 is adopted, and that law, well, if it becomes a law, will that supersede House Bill 2696 and the law that entails?
So if you look at the bill, there's sections where it's all bold, so it's a new section. So that will be added into what is the current law, which was 2696. And then where it says in other sections, like under 4, it's 676-753. That's adding something to the already existing law from 2696. Does that make sense? So where there's new stuff, we'll add new stuff, and then where there's additional things to already existing laws, the board will have to do that work. So like for example, supervisory, the board has to set fees. Supervisory license stays intact, but the board has to set the fees now. That makes sense? If you look at section 3, that's a whole new section because it's adding in the in-training license. So that will be something the board has to do, a whole new license type.
What are you looking at, Sammy?
Oh, Senate Bill 950, the engrossed version.
And is that in our materials?
It's a link in the materials.
Click the link Colleen is saying. Oh, thank you. So, yep, it's very clearly right there. So I don't have any other further questions right now. It says.
I don't have anything else under policy.
Colleen says, I do have a question. I want to understand what is this date in here, 2030? So does that apply to all or just specifically the provisional one?
Can you tell me what
Am I missing something?
section you're in? 29. It's in 2030. Can you tell me what section?
I'm not looking at the specific section, but I'm just trying to like mentally process your previous comment about the specialty licenses expiring in 2030.
No, 2029. They go away. 2029 though. I had the date mistaken. Under section 11.
Trying to understand.
Under section 11. Page 5.
Ish. So would you clarify then, please? What I understand, I mean, would you mind if I clarify? So now there's a total of 6 provisional, general, and supervisory positions or supervisory licenses.
Specialties.
So why, and then the specialty license, why in 2029? Are we considering moving the educational license into the other 3 categories? Or I guess I should say settings, would that belong under supervisory or general? Or is that something that the
Allows time for board to work through that.
2029 deadline allows the board time to work through those?
I think you want to check with the sponsors of the
Just
bill.
going away 2029, but then Or they'll still be offered for new applicants,
No,
specialties, or no, they will not be offered anymore.
they won't be offered.
And beginning.
That's my
what
understanding.
Date, not 2029.
I believe the effective date of the bill, so January 1st of 2026. This is my understanding. We wouldn't be issuing those licenses anymore. And then all the ones that are
Okay, that's what I was looking
issued
for.
will go away January 1st, 29. That's my understanding. That may not be accurate. I would check with the sponsors of the bill.
So I think so as well.
Yeah. Okay, that was where I was unclear. Okay, so those won't be offered, so we're not misleading anyone.
I would check with the sponsors of the bill.
The interpreters are going to switch.
Experts that we can get involved for comment, for feedback.
There was a fact sheet on the list that was, hold on.
I just, can our experts who wrote the bill, participate in discussion of this topic? Is that permitted?
In the meeting.
Take it away. Hello. Good morning, says Eric. Can I speak? Says Christina.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me. Making sure the interpreter can hear me too. Okay, great. My name is Christina Healy-Collister. I am a sign language interpreter in the Salem area, and I'm also chair of the ORID Legislative Committee. And I've been very involved with Senate Bill 950. We had people reaching out to the committee concerned that they had just obtained their licenses under the current law for hundreds of dollars and a lot of work. And as we've all gone through navigating this whole process, and they said, well, what's going to happen to my license if Senate Bill 950 passes? And so while the bill was still in the first chamber on the Senate side, we proposed an amendment and it was accepted to add this extension to their currently held licensees. So what that is saying on page 5 in section 11 is saying that any license that is currently held at the passage of the Senate Bill 950 will have their expiration date extended till January of 2029, because if Senate Bill 950 passes, the licenses obtained after those changes go into effect will have a 3-year expiration date. So this was trying to make it a little bit more fair for people who have gotten these 1-year expiration date licensees to extend their expiration out those 3 years. And also as some kind of compensation in recognition of the high financial costs that they had incurred by getting the licensees before the amendments, if the amendments are accepted, go through. So my understanding is that Senate Bill 950 is not a new law. It's just editing the current law. It's an amendment. It's 8 amendments. And so it is taking the law that's currently in place that you all have been working on for so long and all of the work that you've been doing. And it's just making changes to that. And the goal was that those changes are in keeping with what has been said repeatedly in board meetings and RAC meetings where like, hey, we need a provision for students. Okay, let's make a training license. You tried to pass a training license back in October and it didn't work out. So this is trying to speak to that. So a number of different ways, but that's my understanding of that provision is extending the expiration date for currently held licensees to, in recognition of the financial cost and in recognition that if the bill passes, the new length, like the renewal period, it will be 3 years instead of annually. I'd be happy to answer any other questions from the board.
Says thank you for all of your work and for showing up and commenting today. Thank you. It says thank you for your work as well, so much. All right, bye-bye, thanks. Tammy, all right. Tammy, did you have a question for Christina?
Tammy, yeah, I believe, because Mish had a question about the educational interpreter license. Wasn't that your question, Mish? Or? No?
No,
In training,
no question. My question was actually the same, that Christine had just talked about the year that, that's what I was trying to figure out as well. But I think I
There is some question about how different people are reading 950 compared to the original bill and whether educational interpreters are required to then have a license. Because if you read 950 by itself, some people are feeling that it doesn't specifically include educational interpreters. So if you could clear that up for us, Christina, that'd be great.
Sure. The Senate Bill 950 doesn't specifically speak to educational interpreters because it says anybody providing sign language interpreting services in the state of Oregon needs to be licensed. And so if those schools where educational interpreters are interpreting are in Oregon, then anyone providing sign language interpreting services in those schools in Oregon would need to be licensed. There is question, I think what Sammy was getting at is a really important point, that anybody who has a current license, that license doesn't expire until January 2029. So I think that if the RAC wanted to define those settings, they could do so. And it's also I know that there have been a lot of discussions around like, well, if we say schools, like K-12 schools are educational settings, what about if the deaf student goes to the nurse? Is this all of a sudden a medical setting? What about IEP meetings? These are legal documents. What about like all of these things? And I think that if Senate Bill 950 passes, just to have the rules complete, those settings need to be somehow defined, but it's less critical to make sure that they are so intricate, you know, and excuse me, my phone is not on silent. And so Sammy's right. There do need to be, because there are people who currently hold those licenses and they will not expire until January 2029. Those definitions need to be on the books. But because all of those licenses will expire in 29, it might not be as dire, you know. I hope I'm not really saying it clearly, but I hope that helps. Mish said she understood, so and I'm seeing nods.
I did have one question, Christina.
Sure.
So I heard you say that the in-training license was meant for students who are in school learning sign language interpreting. Is that what I understood?
No.
In-training license?
No, it was purposefully not worded to say anything about a formal training program, because we have interpreters entering the field through apprenticeship, like in Southern Oregon where Eric is. I mean, lots of our state is very rural. And so, and as well as deaf interpreters, CODAs, a lot of, especially like a lot of marginalized communities, honestly, are entering the field through apprenticeship, not through a formal program. And so that's why it's called an I think it's called an interpreter in training.
In training, yeah. But so, but it would be all of those. Could be a student in a program or an apprentice, a CODA, a SODA. It would be inclusive of all those because it's generic. Is that accurate?
Right. And so then the RAC and the board would set the criteria for what can someone be labeled as an interpreter in training. And a person holding that license has to have that direct on-site supervision. And the quality of the services is at the liability basically of the fully licensed interpreter that's with the person doing.
That's very helpful, thank you.
Yes.
Christina, well, one question, this is Tina. So Mish
I was
is
like, I don't know where you are.
right here. Mish, does that answer your question of where you're wanting to go with those students?
We've been talking about an exemption for students and wanting to get, kind of get under that at the next meeting. But it sounds like if 950 passed,
Yes.
the sign language and training license would be that.
Yes.
Wouldn't actually be an exception or an exemption. It would be, you would have this in training license. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. If it passes, we're good. No worries.
Okay, that's great.
Good.
Thank you
Said,
so much.
if not,
I guess we'll see, says Mitch. Think positively, says Colleen. This is Eric here again. I'm trying to think positive, stay positive, sending out all the vibes. But also, our time is limited. SB 950 does not pass. And we are not using our time that we have now. Let's protect our students. And then at the next meeting, you know, we won't be behind. It says, I agree. Most bills do not pass. And so we need to keep going. And thank you, Christina. You know, we need to keep going and we can't just depend on our hope that the bill will pass and solve all of our problems. We need to keep going with our work. And I do still plan to, we will still work on that at our next meeting and inform HLO and continue to be clear and have a clear decision made and get that information from HLO about what we need to do.
We're actually making that a priority at the next meeting. Now,
Eric,
it's priority
thank
now.
you so much. Which says thank you. Eric. Hi, it's Eric again. I don't know if this is the right place to drop this, but several of us have bought licenses last June, paid for licenses last June. And soon these licenses are set to expire, which means we will have to pay again soon. You know, Christina had just mentioned that the licenses will now be good until 2029.
Oh, no.
So because mine's going to expire very quickly here, and I think in July 2025. But not for the next year, right? Wait. Colleen says, hold on, let's clarify. Sorry, what was that saying?
Just education, medical, and legal
Are the only ones.
January 1, 2029. Not supervisor, generalist, or provisional.
Those you have to renew.
Those you have to renew.
Because my people are all educational interpreters,
Right, so they won't have to
which
renew.
means we won't need to
Oh,
renew.
wait.
Oh, but because their licenses are now expiring this
Yeah.
July.
I renew and they'll be good till for 3
Well,
years.
that'll be interesting. They'll have to renew.
Yeah, that's my point. Paying again. Mish says, so if the deadline is extended, the waiver is extended, is that going to also exempt board members from requiring licensure? Because the reasoning is that some people are not on the board are required to be licensed.
they're not on the license because the board requires a license, requires they be licensed.
Except for board members, so it's actually punishing the board members right now. And that's very expensive. What I mean is that the board members are not volunteering because they actually have to pay to be a board member. So if we are short on board members, then there should be an exception to this requirement or an exception to every other interpreter who wants to be a board member, just to make it fair.
Yeah, the law requires it. I mean, you could potentially get Senate Bill 950 to make that change. But it says if you are required to be licensed, you must hold a license, and the deadline was January 1st, 2024, January 30th, 2024. That was in the bill.
Which says we have, but the bill requires all interpreters to become licensed. So we can extend that, and we've already extended that law, so why not extend this part of the law?
The limited waiver is different than a board member specifically in the law being required to be licensed. Said all board members must be licensed by January 30th, 2024. The waiver, and Heather may be able to add to this, the waiver is actually under Health Licensing Office's statutes and laws.
And we can have a moment to change interpreters. Thank you. Thank you. Heather, I'll hold my comments in deference to Heather. Would you like to comment on this?
Thank you, Colleen. I'm not sure how much there is to add. The statute says that board members need to be licensed. The limited waiver of enforcement is within the HLO's discretion, as it has the authority for disciplining licensees. And so the limited waiver of enforcement is very different than the statutory requirement for board members to have licenses.
Thank you, Mitch says. This is Colleen. So does the HLO have any, because we're having trouble filling positions here on the board because of this requirement. It's kind of a catch-22 for us. Is there any way that we can make this work? Maybe reducing fees, having a waiver, having a suspension of requirement. Is there any avenue we can pursue that can lessen the burden to be a part of the board?
So you can't change statutes by rule. So when it's in statute, you can't change it by rule. And I can't speak to fee waivers.
Eric says, thank you. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Sorry. I was thinking. Not saying thank you. And Colleen, yes, Eric? Thank you. Yes, obviously I am thinking about something, so give me a moment. Okay. I'm not talking about myself, even though I am a board member and I do have a requirement to have that license.
They'll just have to wait till the reader's here.
One of my interpreters has reached out to me explaining that they've already paid for the educational license for 24 to 25, fiscal year 24-25. And that license is going to expire soon, which means that that interpreter will have to purchase that license again. At the same time, I'm hearing Sammy say that we have a waiver in effect. And I'm hearing Christina say that if 950 passes, that those who bought those licenses will be grandfathered in to the new statute. Will this individual, but this individual in their situation has already purchased, will have already purchased their educational license twice. And it's going to be, I mean, as far as that applying to us as board members, we're board members, that's fine. I'm thinking about interpreters in the community right now is what I'm talking about. Does that really mean they need to pay twice for their licenses? And then how, if they're grandfathered in from their first license, but because of timing, they had to buy it again, and so now they're grandfathered in twice? So that's one thing I'm a little confused on. Also, my concern, I guess, first would be how the grandfathering would be working. And then second of all, we hire remote interpreters, video remote interpreters from out of Oregon State. And they need to comply with the law. So they have had to buy licenses, even though they're out of state. You don't reside in the state of Oregon. So that is an additional expense, which limits how many people are willing to work with us here. And I've heard it's not necessary, but then some people say it is necessary because it's in the law. So we're getting mixed messaging.
I heard like 5 questions.
And I'm sorry, Sammy, you were about to say something, I realize. Sammy?
if somebody purchased a license and there's a limited waiver, I would think they don't have to renew and they could continue to work under the limited waiver. That's what I think. I'm just making that guess. I don't know for sure. Anything that has to do with Senate Bill 950, I don't know how that, if it passes, will marry with what is currently in place. I can't answer those questions.
And I would just caution for individual situations that we not provide advice. They can ask HLO for assistance. We don't know whether Senate Bill 950 will pass. So right now we have to operate under the current laws, the current statutes that are in place. And if then also a person is in the educational setting, then there's also the Board of Education's rules that would apply. So there's a lot of pieces involved in answering that type of individual question. And I would caution us against providing information about that when we don't know all of the facts and don't know all of the situations that would come into play. So if there's more general questions on the Senate Bill 950 update, then that would be in line with what's on the agenda. But I think that we may be straying a little bit far from the agenda. And if there are more questions or specific issues that the board wants to address, we could get those on an agenda for the future. But I do want to caution us that we stick to what has been noticed to the public and stick to the agenda items.
Thank you, Heather.
Who's gonna win? Who's gonna win between Mish and Eric? Yes, Eric? Can we have a direct answer from the HLO? If someone has a license that it will expire in July, this July, do they need to purchase a new license? I just want like a direct yes or no answer to that question. And Mish says, I think maybe a better question, it's along the same lines, I have the same question. Will the HLO extend the waiver again? Because the current waiver ends in July. And I don't know when Senate Bill 950 is, I don't know when we will know if it's passed. Will the HLO extend that waiver again?
Yes, I believe I said earlier that I think Bob was going to extend it at least another 6 months. I think I said that early in the meeting.
Okay, this is Mish, and so you think that, so my concern is you think that Bob might extend the waiver.
I don't have a definite answer right now.
And this is Colleen, yes, we like an official answer.
I don't have that today. I can get it to you though.
And Mish is asking, when would we be able to know? When would we be let know?
When Bob returns, he will be back in 2 weeks. I can ask him then. We can get on the next agenda in August, or we can do it before then, since it's HLO's waiver on enforcement. We could just put the notice out. I think we have a schedule to start reviewing it like right when he gets back. Tina has a comment.
Christina? I'm sorry, Tina first and then Christina.
Okay, this is Tina too. There's something that you should keep in mind. I don't have the rules right in front of me. Is there late fees? If you were due to renew, never mind, you don't have to, never mind, disregard.
There are late fees, that is accurate. But I think that you would need to renew. If you wanted to be working on the education license, starting January 1st through 29, I think that person will need to renew that education license. Maybe Christina Healy can give us more information on how that is supposed to marry.
Christina, would you be able to clarify that, our confusion?
I see Eric apologizing. Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me. This is Christina Healy again. So as Sammy was saying, it's only the specialty licenses included in section 11. I was like, that's not right. So while you were all talking, I just went back through all my emails and everything with the senator and the legislative counsel who actually like drafts the bill and stuff. And it is that they don't talk about in the actual like legalese, they don't name the licenses, they name the ORSs. And so that's all these numbers. And I overlooked that when they sent the amendment and the legislative committee all looked at it and we're all like, yeah, that looks good. And they changed it from these blah, 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 numbers will expire at the date already set by HLO. And it said like change it to until January 2029. But those blah, 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 blah numbers don't include the supervisory and general and provisional licensees. They only include the educational, medical, and legal. So it didn't do at all what we were intending it to do. And I just realized that like right now. The big issue with it is that as it turns out, this is also new information to me. As it turns out, if you try and do an amendment in the second chamber, when a bill has already gone through the first chamber, if you do an amendment in the second chamber, even if it's like a tiny one, yeah, it stinks, Eric's saying. So because everything has a deadline, so like, it takes like 2 weeks to get an amendment done. And then you have to get the amendment, then you have to get a like public hearing and a work session, everything. And then once it passes, it goes, in this case, it would go to the House floor. If it passed the House floor, now it's amended, it would have to go back to the Senate side and go through get assigned to a committee and do a public hearing and do a work session and all of that. And so it would time out and die. So that amendment that we worked so hard on to address the fact that all of these interpreters have spent hundreds of dollars and now we'll have to spend hundreds more dollars to renew, that amendment didn't fix it. And at this point, there's not really anything we can do without risking killing the bill completely. So thank you for pointing that out, Sammy. Now we know. And maybe we can do a fundraiser or something to help interpreters cover the cost of all these bills, all these fees. I know, right?
Ask that.
I understand. My understanding is that the limited enforcement waiver means that it is not legal to provide services without a license and that the consequences will not be enforced. And so then it's a choice, right? Personally, I do sometimes drive over the speed limit. I try not to go over 5 miles over. I try never to go over 10 miles over because I don't want it to be enforced. There you have it. That's my best understanding.
Mish says, thank you. Thank you. Tammy?
This is Tammy. So with all of the confusion that we've just talked about, and Heather's recommended that people contact HLO, when I contact HLO as a freelance interpreter with my supervisory license working in a K-12 setting, will they be able to answer my question of if I need to renew my license by the end of June?
I believe we're gonna say that you need to renew.
Yeah.
That's gonna be our answer. If you want to choose to work on the waiver, you could choose to do that.
Okay. So all of the educational interpreters need to renew their licenses.
Oh.
Hold on just a moment for the interpreter switch. Oh.
So the educational license requirement.
This is Tammy. I'm trying to remember back to the beginning of the school year, the emergency that happened, that all of the educational interpreters had to go get their license, that we weren't covered under the waiver.
No, you're covered. Oh,
No,
you weren't covered under OD, Department of Education, so they did a temporary rule, which is now permanent. Like, we couldn't make a decision for Department of Ed, so Georgianne, temporary rule, which is now permanent.
okay, that was it.
Mish says, but now the Board of Education will honor HLO, whatever HLO determines as far as the extension, right? But last year, there was a lot of confusion, but now it seems that they're on board.
So this is Tammy. So then now the educational interpreters would be included under the waiver should they decide not to purchase. Correct?
That's my understanding, but I would definitely check with Georgianne on that.
Eric again here. And it seems that if an educational interpreter has already purchased their license, but now they would prefer to wait and see until when the waiver is finalized. Because they already purchased the license, they could be punished, or they definitely are going to be punished, or it will be enforced, and so they have to purchase the license again. If they don't, they'll be fined a fee, right? A late fee, as you just mentioned.
Health licensing office is not going to take action if they're working without a license. If they renew late and they want to renew, they will not pay a late.
Okay, but that is punitive.
Well, I mean, that's just.
Not too
It's
bad,
late,
right? Too bad
it's-
for them. The K,
I mean-
K through 12 interpreters. Colleen says, do we have the choice of waiving the fees, the late fees for those who have already applied the first time and extend the application requirement? Can we waive those fees?
That would all have to go through Bob. I don't have that authority.
Well, Bob should be here.
Well, Bob has a personal
We have
life.
several questions for
He has,
Bob.
he has a personal life. He's out of the country.
That means this meeting shouldn't have happened without Bob.
Don't think he would answer on the fly either way. But I'll write it down.
Eric? Eric again. So the HLO staff here, you know what the late fees are.
Yes. $40 for each year the license is inactive, up to 3 years.
And that's
For which
Which
license?
for which licenses?
All licenses,
Most.
all,
If you have more than one,
each one.
that's what I meant.
Like if you have a supervisory and you have a medical, each would have a $40 late fee.
Thank you.
It's $100 to renew.
And Eric says those who never purchased the license pay $0.
Correct.
So they just get to go on paying $0. Colleen says, we'll bring it up to Bob. We'll bring this matter up to Bob and that's it.
The Department of Ed changed
The
their
agenda
rules.
for the next meeting.
The Department of Ed changed their rules so that an education interpreter can work under the waiver.
But what about those who already purchased the license?
What I mean, the licenses are already bought. People bought the licenses before ODE changed.
So, yes. And if they chose to renew, they could do that, or they could just can now work under the
It
waiver.
just needs to be put on the agenda, Colleen.
I'm not sure what I'm putting on the agenda. I'm putting on like refund people that got the license or not have a late fee. What am I putting? I'm not exactly sure what I'm supposed to have here. I'm gonna just clarify it.
This is Tammy. Is it,
I mean, what's more flexible? What's allowed? Both?
I don't know. That's several questions in one.
I
I
put both down then as possible choices to show. We need to show
Educational community.
the educational community
That they're being heard.
that they are being heard. Tammy, go ahead.
is it possible because it was an administrative issue between the Department of Ed and HLO and the licensure, is it possible that because the educational interpreters were required to buy those licenses last year while everyone else got the waiver, is it possible that those that purchased those licenses last year at least get 1 year for free?
I don't know, because partially something may happen with Senate Bill 950. That would change the dynamic. It's possible that there could be a discount, I suppose. There's a discount already for the education license.
Is it possible, this is Tammy, is it possible to get an extension for those people to not have to renew by July 1st so that we can maybe wait until we see if 950 passes or not?
I mean, you get like a pass on the late fee if they choose to.
Maybe, yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
I don't think so. If they renew late, they renew late. I mean, you could,
Because this is Tammy, because the issue is that the educational interpreters were required to buy a license when other interpreters were able to choose to work under the waiver. So because those educational interpreters did not get to have that opportunity, they should at least get one more year for free. Or,
will bring that up to Bob, absolutely. But again, there was a temporary rule put in place fairly immediately with Department of Ed, and their rules we can't change. I will ask if they could have a free year. I will ask if the late fee could be waived. I will ask if there could be a deadline extension. I'll ask for all three of those things, and I will have Bob bring you an answer at the next meeting.
thank you, Sammy. But they did change it, but it was after we'd already purchased the licenses because we had to have it by the first day that we were working. So, and that wasn't changed until September, October, I can't remember. Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
September.
So, and I know we start work, third week of August, so. But thank you, Sammy. Appreciate it.
Christina has her hand up.
I see Christina. She's raising her hand. Let's go to her if you don't mind, the expert.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Chair. This is Christina Healy. I'm a sign language interpreter in Salem. I don't know if I have to introduce myself every time. I'm looking at the engrossed Senate Bill 950, and the wording says a license issued under, and then those numbers that mean the specialty licenses, which includes the educational license, a license issued under that before the operative date of Senate Bill 950 is valid until January 1, 2029. So I'm wondering if that means you don't have to, it doesn't have to be not expired because it's a license issued under ORS 762, 765, and 768.
Halfway expired.
It just says a license issued before the operative date specified in section 12 of this 2025 Act. So if it's issued before the 91 days after the close of session, would that, it doesn't say it has to be active. It just says it has to be issued before that date. Could that be a way that Bob could recognize, like, hey, if your specialty license was issued before this date, then it is valid until January 1st, 2029?
If 950 passes, all bets are off. HLO won't have any fee making authority or any of that. So it will be completely.
Okay, well, I'm just proposing that it says if it's issued before that date, then it's good until January 1st, 2029. It doesn't say that it can't be expired. It just says issued before that date. So.
No, yeah, no, I don't know because I don't know if it's going to pass. I can't answer that.
Can Heather speak to that?
Since it hasn't passed, I don't know that she would, but maybe she would.
I'm sorry. I do not feel comfortable speaking about these issues on the fly. I think that if 950 passes there's a lot of unknowns. I think there are a lot of questions. I also would recommend that we get back to the agenda and stick with the agenda for the meeting. And if there are questions on that we notice this for the next meeting. But I can look into that if there is a question for the future, if 950 in that section passes, or what the potential impact would be. But I'm not able to comment on that right now.
Lance is okay. I guess that's our hint to get back on the agenda. So that would be the Rules Advisory Committee update.
I do that.
But then we come to other public and interested party feedback, comments. You know, we've some great comments so far. We much appreciate that. Any more comments? Have. At this time, Board of Sign Language interpreters will hear public and interested parties' feedback. Public comment specific to matters listed on the meeting agenda or topics relevant to what the board has statutory authority to regulate. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes and will not be allowed if they are disruptive or our board's conduct of business. You are called to comment. HLO staff will request the public member to unmute themselves. The chairperson and HLO reserve the right to end a person's comment early, and also have HLO staff mute the public member if the comment does not pertain to matters listed on the meeting agenda or topics relevant to what the board has statutory authority to regulate. So please raise your hand on Zoom or in the room if you would like to make a comment to be recognized. Anyone? No email. Josh.
No emails. Andrea has started.
Hi. We're waiting for can you not hear me very well? Okay. We're waiting for my admin to join. She just ran down to her office to join. She does have a comment. If can stall or wait, or it'll just be a second till she logs in. Thank you.
Is it Annie?
Colleen says, no, I won't count the time until they begin their comment. So yeah, we're good. Same sense of yes. Yes.
We just have an Annie join. I don't know if that's
Annie? Andrea?
Annie.
Annie, yes, it's Annie. Thank you.
The interpreters are gonna switch. Hey, Annie.
Hello, thank you for recognizing me to speak to the board today. I am the director of the Lane Regional Inclusive Services Program in Eugene, and I am hoping to speak to you about the situation we are in finding qualified interpreters for to serve students in Lane County. We have one of the largest groups of sign language interpreters in the state, serving students in the K-12 settings in schools and also in early childhood settings. As you all well know, sign language interpreting is a profession of practice. And in order to meet the required proficiency markers for passing the EIPA and providing quality services to students leaving programs in universities have to get their hands up. They have to practice, they have to receive feedback, they have to receive guidance and mentorship to build the skills that they need to be excellent interpreters, which is what we expect of all of our staff. Coming out of educational programs in universities, students haven't had an opportunity to interpret live with students, so they don't have an opportunity to receive that professional growth that they need to provide quality services. They can't take the EIPA and pass it. They can't get in front of students. We can't provide mentorship and feedback. They don't build their practice. And we're in a loop of having people graduate from programs that aren't ready to work with students. And we have no ability to build their practice to ever be ready to work with students. We are facing a shortage of people in this area. And I know this is not unique to my program, where by the fall, we will be, I'm looking at 6 students that we just don't have interpreters for. And I don't know how I'm going to serve those kids. I have applicants that I'm ready to build their practice. They're good interpreters. They have a 3.4 on the EIPA, but I won't know by fall if they're taking the EIPA at the end of this month, but I won't know by September if they've got that 0.1 that tips them into the 3.5 where I could hire them. I won't know, so I can't hire them. And I have 6 students who won't have interpreters. We have a mechanism in education where under teacher standards and practices, I can write a letter of support for a teacher that says, as the school district, I am recommending this teacher for a restricted license, and I take responsibility for their education, to support their practice. And we recommend as a school district that TSPC grant a provisional teaching license to this teacher. So the school district, us as the school district, can support the growth of this teacher who has not yet completed their university program and has not yet demonstrated their competence as a teacher to receive a full teaching license. I would ask the board to consider the same thing for sign language interpreters. We need to be able to get people into buildings where we can provide them mentorship, feedback, and strong professional development to get their hands up to build their practice. There is no other way to build the skills that interpreters need to provide quality services for students. We have to have an opportunity to do what we do as administrators of these programs and provide professional opportunities to grow interpreters. So I would ask for that the same concession to be made for interpreters that we make for teachers, to build strong teaching programs and to have strong teachers in desperate times where there was a huge teacher shortage. We are in the same situation with interpreters where we just have an incredible shortage, and we need to be given the opportunity to build a strong workforce. Thank you very much. I appreciate the consideration.
Thank you. Eric says thank you. Are there any other comments? Or
Responses to Annie's comment?
Okay, I'm seeing no comments. Thank you, Annie, for your feedback. Are there any other comments? Checking around to see, and Eric. Go ahead, share your comment.
Your public comment?
I don't know if this is involved in public comment. I'm just throwing it out there. Well, I have a comment too, says Colleen, but go ahead, you share yours. Well, it's just one thing that I thought would be helpful for HLO to know about our community. Seeing as we're on Zoom,
There's an AI.
there's an AI companion. And that's a technology thing that's in Zoom now. And it will hear and listen to information and will type out a summary of that information. It's not a script, it's a summary. And I just wanted to put that out there to HLO because I feel like if we use AI companion, then maybe we would have a better, stronger summary in English. And I know that, records are uploaded to, online somewhere. But, is someone going to sit there and watch the entire thing? I think it would actually benefit be a better benefit to have a summary that's a little bit easier to understand, just a
Like bullet
basic
points.
summary, bullet points, that'll help us forward. Colleen Sue said, that'd be, really great for our continuous community involvement too, to just have a summary instead of people having to go and watch the entire thing. Eric says also it includes like a to-do, Sammy saying, okay, having all these things to do, though AI can summarize those as well. It has a to-do feature that'll say Eric has XYZ to do. I think that would really be a benefit. I'm not saying I want to add to your workload,
It wouldn't.
but it's an easy feature that you can just select to run in the background. It'll summarize it for you. I'm just putting it out there.
On the
being
host
a
side.
Tool
Colleen says.
for the future. Colleen says, okay, back to comments, I'm gonna comment myself. Is it possible, two things actually, for the vacant positions, is it possible that we can look at the pool of applicants?
The original.
The originals to see who were not chosen and maybe see if they were interested in these vacant positions now, even though they weren't chosen in the first round. Because they would still have, we still have some names, and if you wanted some names, we could look back in the past and see where those people are at now. That's my first comment. Secondly, because of the rules and regulations
Requiring the board to be licensed. Maybe we could take a look at the list of who is licensed already and work from that list because they have already paid for their license. So they're in a position to serve on the board.
So between those two ideas, maybe we can make a mark in those vacant positions. What do you think? Any ideas? Comments?
I can ask the governor's office how that would,
Anyone in the world? Go ahead, Sammy.
how that would work to having the board look at interest forms. It has a lot of private information in it. I don't know exactly how that works. It's their documents, so I could ask. We have sent out, I think, 2 Gov deliveries, just like an email blast asking licensed people, letting them know that there's vacant positions open, and we haven't gotten any response. But we will send it again.
Colleen says, yeah, looking at the first group of applicants from 2023, which was way back when, and seeing if any of them would be interested in serving now, that would be good. Okay, if everything's quiet, we will close comments. And is there any other board business? I know we had 2 issues that were brought up earlier on, but is there anything else that we should discuss? Or should we just say, see you in August? Eric says, I'm not saying anything. Colleen says, well, then I would say speech. The Board of Sign Language Interpreters meeting is adjourned at 12:28 p.m. Okay, thank you. Bye. Take care.